Thank you. Senator Waters.
Thank you very much.
Hello, folks. Apologies, I've only just arrived, so hopefully my questions don't repeat what others have already asked you. Maybe some overlap, but I'm sure you will. I want to ask about the Northern Australia Infrastructure Facility and the Northern Australia Infrastructure Projects Pipeline.
Certainly.
Are you the right folk for that? Great. I reckon I might have some slightly different ones to you, so I'll give it a try. I'm interested in what the interaction between those two programs is. Do you have to get through the pipeline in order to access the facility?
Yeah, you're talking about the loan facility, the $5 billion loan facility.
Both of them, the facility and the pipeline. How do they relate to each other?
There's not a direct connection between the two.
Okay.
The government announcement about the Northern Australia Infrastructure Pipeline is about developing a long-term pipeline of projects.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily mean that they will be funded. There is the loan facility available for applicants to consider accessing.
In the short term, as opposed to the long term?
Well, it's $5 billion, so...
Yeah, I've got some questions about the money that I'll put to you, and I'm not sure if they best belong in Treasury or here, because I'm interested in how you've booked that $5 billion, because, well, first of all, can you clarify for me whether the amount of concession on the loan over the life of the loan is indeed going to be treated in the year that the loan is granted?
They're good question, Senator, but the Treasury are administering that loan arrangement, so they would be best placed to answer that. I don't know how that's treated.
Okay.
There are measures in the budget, in the financial accounting requirements in relation to when essentially the concessional element of the loan is booked.
Yes.
And Treasury and Finance are probably best placed to assist you with that.
I guess the reason I'm even asking that, though, is I'm wondering about the lifespan of the facility. Is it just for the 4 years on the budget books, or are you anticipating it will take longer to spend the $5
the nature of
billion?
these loans are often 20 to 25 years or something of that equivalent. So
sure, the loans themselves, but the facility, the life of the facility.
The facility is available over the forward estimates, is my understanding.
Yeah, but after that as well, are you planning on spending the full $5 billion?
Well, that will depend on
the
projects coming forward. I can't give you a definitive answer on that, but the government has at this stage made provision for the facility to be available over the forward estimates. Whether the projects or the proposals continue beyond that will have to be determined. I think we're very early stages of this.
Okay, so if there was enough interest to subscribe for the full $5 billion, the government would be prepared to do that in the 4-year forwards?
Depending on the quality of the projects
if they all met the criteria and what have you. Okay, great. So it'll depend on subscription as to how long the facility is
and the quality of the
alive
projects
for.
and the like.
And the
quality of the projects.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. What is the role of your department in administering the facility?
None at this stage.
I think it's probably that we would envisage that the Treasury will manage the facility where project proposals are received. We envisage a role in advice being sought from us by the Treasury in relation to project proposals. Those arrangements are yet to be settled, Senator.
Okay.
It's also fair to say, Senator, the Treasury will be consulting us on the design of the facility, as we've got some expertise in that area of concessional loaning.
All right, so it's very much at the beginning of the process.
That's right.
It's the beginning of the process, and they're in the Treasury looking at guidelines and arrangements for how the program might work.
Okay, so you're envisaging, by the sounds of that, though, having some input into the assessment of the applications?
We do envisage that.
Yeah. Do you have any sense yet on what criteria or cost-benefit analysis methodology you would employ in the process of that assessment?
No, those details haven't yet been settled.
Okay. Is there a list that you can choose from, or might there be an entirely new methodology that you've not even foreseen that could be used?
Again, those details are yet to be worked through. I think the government has certainly provided essentially the offsets and the like to get this incentive fund established, but what they haven't yet determined is the criteria under which it will operate.
Okay. Because I'm interested in whether Infrastructure Australia's cost-benefit analysis guidelines would be a go-to document, but same answer.
Well, certainly we do envisage, as Ms O'Connor's indicating, the pipeline is designed to work off the infrastructure audit, to then work with jurisdictions and the industry to sort of take those to the next stage where they can actually become projects that might be able to be considered under the Infrastructure Australia methodology, and to create a long-term pipeline of projects that are deemed to fit the national priorities under the audit. The infrastructure financing facility effectively then is an avenue by which proponents may wish to draw on for those for whom that works.
Well, that's interesting because I asked that earlier. That's what I was trying to establish. Could you go through the pipeline and then access the facility?
You may,
And you
but it's
said
not.
You may or you may not necessarily.
Have to, but you
Other
could.
projects may
Right.
already be of a sufficient state where they,
Okay.
they already are in a position to submit proposals to Infrastructure Australia or to the Commonwealth
Yeah.
for access to the loan financing facility.
Okay, well, given that the lifespan of the pipeline is only 4 years, obviously, because that's all the budget goes for, does that therefore answer my earlier question about how long the facility will go for? Because if
No,
you're
I don't think the
envisaging-
pipeline will be 4 years at all. I think the pipeline will be a much longer term pipeline. If you look at the Infrastructure Australia audit, it's projected out what the project requirements and needs are for Northern Australia over quite a long period of time, well beyond 4 years. So we don't see that the pipeline would be restricted to the next 4 years. It would be a long-term pipeline of projects.
And that presumably would need dollars to go with it?
Well, there would need to be some funding and financing for those projects to come to fruition, yes.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to get at is what's going to be the total cost, and what's on the budget is obviously for the 4-year period,
Yep.
but it sounds like
Yep.
it may well, that both of those programs may yet continue and other budget decisions will be made in future about
Future budget
that.
decisions may be
Yeah.
taken, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, all right. Can you tell me, either through the facility or through the pipeline process, actually, firstly, can you tell me your level of involvement in both of those respective processes? You said for the facility, you expect to be involved by Treasury in the assessment process.
But it
For
is
the
Treasury's,
pipeline-
Treasury owns that responsibility and involve us. The pipeline will be ours to...
That'll be yours?
Yep.
Okay. Well, can you tell me a bit more about what you know about the shape of that process so far, about the pipeline? If any of those details have been decided yet?
We haven't settled details. Essentially, as I said, it was very much taking to the next stage the Infrastructure Australia audit to actually work with jurisdictions and private sector proponents to actually see whether we can bring forward essentially a
Pipeline of projects.
Yeah.
project development, essentially.
So is it correct if I conceive of it as the audit is the long list and the pipeline is the short list from the long list?
It's designed to take some develop some higher priority projects in a way which they can then be considered for future funding.
But they have to have been on the list of the audit first?
They don't have to, but I mean, the idea is the pipeline of projects. You would expect the audit would identify what the needs are, so there's a high expectation that there'd be a
it's not mandatory,
correlation.
but it's probably
But it
gonna be
wouldn't, I don't see you'd ignore something if it wasn't,
Yeah.
didn't happen to be caught up
Okay.
in the audit.
Okay, thank you. So in relation to that pipeline, obviously I'm sure people will be clamouring to get on that short list or the long list if they're not already. Excuse me. Can you tell me whether you've been approached by any particular companies with a view to them expressing interest in participating in that pipeline process?
Not as yet, it's
not
too
as
early
yet.
days, yeah.
Okay. Well, could you perhaps just take on notice to double check that that's the case, and I'll ask you again next time who's
Certainly.
Yeah.
seeking
Yep. Okay.
your views.
So just as a advisory, we've got about 15-minute slot for you.
Okay. I probably only need another,
3 minutes.
yeah, I'll probably finish
Alright.
in that time. I've just lost my place, but hopefully I'll stick to that. Thank you. In terms of back on the facility, sounds like I'll have to go to Treasury for the bulk of those questions.
I think that's right.
But just see if there's anything else of relevance. Pardon me. Yeah, can I just ask about the interaction between the Regional Development Australia roadmaps and the Reef 2050 plan the Department of Environment is administering? Effectively, the Reef plan commits the government, the world, the industry to certain targets. They appear to be in at least partial conflict with some of the infrastructure proposals. What's the interaction between those two documents? What trumps what?
Well, first of all, I'm not aware of any direct conflicts between any infrastructure plans and the Reef plan. I'm happy to talk with my colleagues in Department of Environment to go through and see if there are any conflicts. In terms of projects being funded right now, I don't believe there are any. But
Look, there's sediment targets, there's water quality targets,
Yep.
and the natural implication of some of these infrastructure projects would be it'll be an awful lot harder to meet those targets. So that's what I mean when I say there appears to be a conflict.
Conflict.
It makes the challenge harder to meet those reef targets. Has there been any formal discussion between your two departments about the interaction of those two separate government commitments?
Not formally. I mean, I think
We're
the
aware of
essence
the
is-
Reef plan.
The essence is that all project proposals will have to meet the environmental requirements that, of the assessment process.
Well, of the law, yes, but of the Reef plan?
Well, as I said, I'd need to go away and look
Yeah,
at
so
this.
can you just tell me if you've been instructed that you somehow need to comply with the Reef
Well, we're
plan, or
certainly-
if no one's really made that rule?
No, we're
That's-
certainly aware of the Reef plan, and we've had a copy of it and
Yes,
been
that's-
consulted by the
awareness is
Department of
one thing.
Environment. Yeah.
But I'm interested in whether you've been told to make sure that your proposals wouldn't make it harder to achieve those targets in that plan.
Well,
Right.
No.
we haven't. And as I say, the proposals in the RDA plans, for instance, are just that. They are proposals.
They're
They haven't
early
been
days
brought
as
to a
well.
level of finality which would enable us to assess whether they are or aren't in conflict with the Reef plan.
And I think, part of our processes would involve, if there is something to be considered by government that potentially does conflict with the Reef plan, that would be drawn out at the time.
At which time, sorry?
At the time the government might consider funding something.
Right, okay. All right, thank you, Chair.